everybody, and welcome back to our Foundations course, number 1. We are continuing with Unit 1, which is the Entering the Formation Program unit. And we have already had 2 talks, and this is the last talk for Unit 1. And what we are going to discuss today will be the elements of the program. Let me share with you the parts of my presentation today. The first major part of my presentation will be regarding men's and women's group meetings. Okay, I will explain what that is and the importance of these meetings. What are they for? How do they work? And how can we help to make them work well? Okay? And then the second major part of my presentation will be regarding what we call our pastoral leaders. These are men and women who have the responsibility to guide and help us through this process of formation. Okay? Again, I will explain who they are, what they do, how they can help us, and how we can help them help us. Okay? So a lot also depends on our cooperation with them to help them help us. Okay, let me say something first of all about men's and women's groups. And let me start out by saying that it's very important in our life in community to have small groups. Now, it is the case that when we meet in community, generally we meet in 2 settings or 2 kinds of situations. One is in large settings, and the other one is in smaller groupings. So we have large gatherings such as community gatherings. Now in a large community like this one, we can have subgroupings of the larger community, what we call sectors or districts, etc. No? And these are still large gatherings because these are gatherings in which we present ourselves to the Lord as a body. The concern here is that we are together as brothers and sisters and as a people, presenting ourselves to the Lord in worship, listening to Him if He wishes to speak to us as a body. And so it's a situation where we are together coming before the Lord as one. And it's a larger setting as you can see. And it's a very important dynamic, a very important feature of our life together. Just imagine if your experience of community is only in small groups. There's something missing there, because you miss out on the sense of belonging to a larger body with a common mission, with a common call from the Lord, with a common direction being given to us by the Lord. On the other hand, we do need small groups. It's a very important principle as well that we need to have smaller groupings in which we can receive personal support, where we can grow in our personal relationship, where we can express brotherly and sisterly love in that smaller context, where we can have daily life accountability in our discipleship. If you only have large gatherings and no small groups, then it's very difficult to have that kind of personal care and support as well as accountability. Imagine that you are simply attending a prayer meeting every week and it's a large gathering and that's all you do, attending prayer meetings, and it's a good experience. You receive a lot from that experience, but there's no opportunity for you to receive much more personal support, but also for you to be accountable for your life as a Christian, as a disciple of the Lord. Small groups can do certain things which are difficult to achieve in large gatherings. We can share about our life in a deeper way in a small group. We can get to know one another even better. For example, we can become familiar with one another's families, one another's children, one another's parents, etc. Especially if our small group meetings are held in the homes of our brothers and sisters, it's a great way to get to know one another even better. We can follow a pastoral or spiritual program which are catered more to the needs of the members, no? So that your leader or the one who is organizing and leading the group can have a much more personalized approach to the spiritual growth of the group. Fellowship is very important in our life in community, you know, and in a small group, you have lots and lots of different creative ways of enjoying one another's company and do things on a smaller scale. No? It's much harder to have fellowship on a larger scale. It's much quicker and easier and much more personal to have fellowship on a smaller scale. We can also receive announcements and updates about schedules and about happenings in community and so on. Of course, in community, we have other ways of letting things be known, no? Through bulletins, through email, through our website, and other kinds of bulletins. But in a small group, your leader and the other brothers and sisters keep you updated on what is to come. All community members throughout their entire life and participation in community are part of a small group. That's a very important principle. Nobody outgrows a small group. Nobody becomes too mature to have a small group. You cannot say that I am already a veteran of community, I have been around long enough, and I am already formed and mature enough, and I don't need a small group. Okay? All members, from the most experienced and the oldest member to the youngest and to the newest member, all of us are part of a small group. Maybe some terminology can help. No? At least this is terminology that we use in our local community. It's possible that in other sort of the spirit communities, other terms might be used. Generally, we have what's called men's and women's groups. Okay? And these are groups which we have during our time of formation. Remember, in a previous talk, I said that the formation period is somewhat extended. We're looking at roughly 3 to 4 years for a person to be able to understand enough about what it means to be part of community and to have enough time to discern whether God is calling you into community. So this formation period will take about 3 to 4 years. And during that time of formation, you are part of what's called a men's and women's group. Okay? Now, like I said, the terminology can vary in other communities, and even after the time of formation, it's likely or it's possible that you would be still part of a men's and women's group. In some communities, after the time of formation, the members are grouped into what's called a fraternal group. A fraternal group. And this is usually led by a frat group leader, a fraternal group leader, compared to a pastoral leader in the first kind of grouping. And I won't go into this second kind of grouping in great detail, but to say that this is for people who have finished the formation process. They are peers in that group, and the understanding is that they are mature enough to help one another in an ongoing way. Okay? They no longer need someone to direct them or to advise them in a continual basis, but they can really help one another in that fraternal relationship basis. No? But for all intents and purposes, for most of us, we are part of a men's and women's group. A men's and women's group led by a pastoral leader. This is the small group during our formation period. And this is the main way of plugging into the community. In many ways, this is where you really experience community. You know, you go to a gathering and especially in a larger community, you have these hundreds of people. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and to feel kind of left out, no? or to feel like, do I really belong here? Who do I know among the people here? Now, of course, the longer you are in community, then these faces become friends, no? Become brothers and sisters. But it can be an overwhelming experience to go into a new community and you don't know many people there. And that's why it's very important to have a smaller group where on a weekly basis, you see these same people, you share your life with these people, you experience practical love from these people, and that's the main way of experiencing community. Through your pastoral leader and through your ongoing participation in the small group, you will receive ongoing formation in your discipleship. Now remember, I said before that it's not only the courses, no? Like what you're going through right now. It's not just the courses that will help you out in this formation period, but a lot depends on your real life experience of brothers and sisters who support you, who love you, who care for you, who pray for you, who forgive you, who correct you, etc. No? This is where the rubber hits the road, you might say. This is where you experience what it means to be committed and to be in a relationship of commitment with brothers and sisters. You know, one analogy you might say is the human body. No? Look at our own body, and we have many what's called cells, human cells. You might say that the whole community is like a human body, and each of us individually is like a human cell. No? So each of us are cells in the body, but notice that the cells themselves need to be grouped together in what biologists call tissues or organs, no? etc. Cells are normally related together in smaller groupings called tissues or organs. No? And you know, if I extend the analogy, a tissue is where you have blood vessels going through and nerves going through. The cells derive their life from being connected to one another in a tissue. No? And maybe that's an analogy of sorts, that we also receive a lot of our life in community precisely through these small groupings. How do the men's and women's groups work? What happens in a men's and women's group? Let me first ask the question whether is there a reason why we recommend, and in fact we have what you might call same gender groups, same gender groupings, the brothers together in a group and the sisters separately in their own group, no? As compared to a mixed group of men and women in a small grouping. It is the case that much of our life in community is mixed. Okay? This course is already a mixed grouping. Our gatherings are mixed groupings. Our fellowships are usually mixed groupings, and etc. We feel that in the case of a smaller grouping where we want to receive support and help and guidance and a place where we can receive growth as disciples of the Lord, there really are advantages to having same gender groupings, no? To be in a group with people of the same gender as ourselves. For formation purposes, there are many advantages to these groupings. It makes certain kinds of personal sharing more possible and helpful. No? To give a practical example, later on in your formation, the single men will receive talks about being single men, which includes talks about sexuality. The same goes with the sisters, the single women. They will also receive talks about sexuality as applied to their situation as single women. Now, of course, we want to be able to discuss the material and to apply that material into our own life. Oh, it's also the case that in your small groupings, very often you want to share much more intimately and much more personally. And if you are in a group with people of your same gender, it facilitates that kind of sharing. The sharing can go much deeper, and we can give advice to one another based on our own experience. And there's something that's very, very bonding and very enriching about sharing the things which people, because they are like us, they are men like us, or they are women like us, they can appreciate and support us in our situation. The members are able to help one another because of similar personal experiences. Also, we are able to express brotherly love to one another in a men's group, and correspondingly, we can express sisterly love to one another in a women's group. And again, that's something very rich, very, very enriching for us. How do we make our men's and women's groupings work well? Okay? We cannot expect them to work well just like that on their own, but we are responsible to help make them work well. And it's not only the responsibility of your pastoral leader. Everybody needs to help to make the meetings work well, or the groups work well. Let me give you a few things. No? First is, the members need to be committed to the same purpose. Okay? That you know that the groupings are important, you know the purpose of the groupings, and you are committed to make them work. No? These groups are only effective if all the members have a commitment to live the same way of life, if they are pulling in the same direction. Okay? It's very difficult if some of the members in the group are not as motivated or are not committed to the same thing, the dynamic will change. And so a lot depends on the commitment of all the members in the group. Now also notice that these groupings, these men's and women's groups, are no longer what might be called evangelistic groups. These are in fact formation groups, because the members in these groups are no longer being evangelized, but they have already made they have expressed a desire to be disciples of the Lord. They have in fact already made a commitment to enter into the formation process, and it is no longer the time to evangelize them, it is the time to disciple them. Okay? So the members of the group are in the process of being discipled, being formed. The second thing that is necessary to make the groups work well is brotherly and sisterly love, of course. No? In our groupings, this is the place for us to really regard our fellow members, not simply as co-members in a very functional group, but these are my brothers and sisters. Here is my brother, or here is my sister, and this person is committed to me, and I am committed to this person in very practical ways. It's worth remembering that in the New Testament, what's called the love of the brethren is the heart of Christian community. You know, we very often think of community in terms of structure, no? Or meetings, or a building, or a center, or something like that. No? That is kind of a structural thing. No, what makes community tick, what makes community work, the very heart of community is love. Love among the brothers and sisters. You know, in the early days of the church, there was a man named Tertullian, and he in one of his writings, he said, look, even the pagans, those who are not Christians, are amazed at us, because they look at us and they themselves say, see how they love one another. See how they love one another. Isn't that great? If because of the normal way that we relate to each other in loyalty and commitment and love, that people who don't belong to our community will notice a difference. And they will say, look at them. Look at the way they serve each other. Look at the way they relate to each other. Look at the way they love each other and forgive each other and serve each other and so forth. It's great, no? When people can actually take notice of the way we love each other. Born of the same Heavenly Father, saved by the one Lord Jesus Christ, and filled with the same Holy Spirit, we are brothers and sisters in a way that is utterly unique and wonderful. Utterly different, no? We are brothers and sisters in a way that is different even from our families, our relationship with our families, because now we are bonded together in the Spirit for the glory of the Father, and our relationships are eternal. Our relationships are meant to last forever. Let's look at 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 22. Having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincere love of the brethren, love one another earnestly from the heart. Very simple exhortation, but a very important one. We have to love one another earnestly from the heart. Or Romans chapter 12, verse 10. Very simply, Paul says, love one another with brotherly affection. You might say the same thing. Love one another with sisterly affection. Okay? You know, love, we can love people in a very functional way, but it's not much fun. Okay? It's not such a great thing. What we also want is to express love with real, genuine affection for each other. Okay? And that's what Paul is saying. Of course, we don't limit our love and commitment only to members of our small group, but we do have a special responsibility for them. You know, speaking personally, you know, I have been part of community for many years, really, more than 25 years. And you know, I have special relationships. I know many brothers and sisters in community, and I'm on good terms. What I mean by that is I can converse. I know the background. I know them by name. I know their stories. I know lots of people in community. They're all my brothers and sisters. However, the brothers in my men's group, okay, the brothers in my small group are the ones, because I see them on a regular basis, they are the ones whom I really have a special responsibility for. They care for me, and I care for them in a way that is also different from my relationship with other brothers and sisters. Some things we do in our small groups, in our men's and women's groups, we share our life. And you know, we don't just share spiritual things. This is something worth saying. Sometimes we think that in our sharing time, we only share about our prayer, about our scripture reading, etc. Yes, those are very important things to share. But you see, our commitment in community is what we call a full commitment. Okay? You are in the process of getting there, no? of appreciating this full commitment we have in community. And we want to begin to share not only about our spiritual experiences, but just what's going on in your life, what's going on in your office, what's going on in your family, what's going on in your in the way you integrate your sexuality. You know, to be very frank about it, how do you integrate, or how do you maintain chastity, or how do you cope with all the temptations around us, etc. Now, these are very personal things that we are also encouraged to share about in our small groups. We receive input, advice, practical help from our brothers and sisters. Sometimes they are able to give us advice which are really helpful. Sometimes, perhaps the most that they can do is to say, brother, sister, that's a really challenging situation, and we don't know, we can't give you any advice that will really solve your problem, but this we are committed to do. We will pray for you. Okay? We will pray for you until your problem is resolved. No? Sometimes simply sharing about it is helpful already, no? To be able to some people call it ventilating, or at least bringing it out into the open. Sometimes our problems seem so huge if we try to keep it to ourselves. But my experience is when I share it with my brothers and it's brought out to the light, it puts things in proportion. Okay? It puts things in perspective, you might say. And even sometimes the brothers don't have to say anything, because when I share it, I begin to see that, yeah, this is not so bad after all. And with God's grace, I can overcome this problem. No? So that opportunity to share your concerns is very, very helpful. Now, we also need additional contact outside of our formal meetings. You are highly encouraged to meet with other members of your group on other informal events or other informal situations. Have lunch together. Go out and go bowling together, or get together for coffee and so on. But this is the place where you can really deepen your personal friendship. Okay? Friendship with one another. And of course, we pray for one another in our groups. Okay, another thing to help make our meetings work well, or our groups work well, is we need to be faithful to our meetings. Here is a passage from Hebrews chapter 10. The author says, "Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." Okay? So even in the time of this author, already there are people who are not coming together, who are not meeting, who are not showing up. And the exhortation is, no, let's meet together. When our brothers and sisters expect us to be there, let's be present. You should not miss a meeting without a good reason. Your regular presence is important. It makes a difference in the group, whether you are there or not. The brothers and sisters will miss you, and the meeting will be different because of your absence. It's for your own good. The meetings are meant for your own good as well. So why deprive yourself of the help and the love and the support of brothers and sisters? Our brothers and sisters are counting on us for our presence, our help, our encouragement, our input, etc. No? So our presence makes a big difference. More contact means more love. More contact means more love. Your small group should be one of the highest priorities in your life. You mustn't have a mercenary approach. You know what a mercenary is, no? Somebody who signs up to fight in a war, but he's there. I don't know if there are female mercenaries. Maybe there are, no? But this person signs up for the money. He or she is not committed to the cause or to the reason for the battle, but this person is there purely for the money. Well, we can have a mercenary approach if we come to our meetings and say, okay, what will I get out of this meeting? Okay? And when you become cynical and you start saying, nah, I can't get much from this meeting, from these people, if you start thinking along those lines, then you become a mercenary. The right attitude in a meeting is, what can I give to my brothers and sisters? And what will the Lord present to me in this meeting, which He wants me to grow in, and which is a gift from Him? So let's not have a mercenary approach. We need to fight for our meetings. Sometimes it's convenient to attend a meeting. There are times when it's not convenient. You are very busy. You are under pressure. Maybe you're also spiritually down. In fact, the advice of the spiritual masters is, if you are spiritually down, all the more you need to be with your brothers and sisters. Not less, but more contact with brothers and sisters. Okay, another key to helping to make the meetings work well is to live in the light. live in the light. This is a term that is borrowed from John chapter 3. Okay? Or at least this idea of living in the light comes from John chapter 3. Jesus says, "Everyone who does evil hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. But he who does what is true comes to the light, that it may be clearly seen that his deeds have been wrought in God." Jesus is saying here that if your conscience is clean and you are in a good relationship with God and you are living an upright life, then all the more you want to be in the light, to stand where the light is. But isn't it the case that if you have a guilty conscience, or if you have done something wrong, or if your relationship with God is not right, you want to hide more and more from Him and from one another? Well, we want to live in the light. Come out of the darkness. Come out of the shadows. Come into the light. Live in the light. What does this concretely mean? Okay? What does living in the light concretely mean? It means sharing openly our weaknesses, even our sins. Another word for this is to have a certain kind of transparency in our life. No? A brother was sharing with me recently that he's a pastoral leader, and he has single brothers, single men in his group. And at their first meeting, he said, "Okay, I'd like us to share about our sexual what's going on in our sexuality." You could almost hear the gasp of shock among the brothers. No, they're not used to just talking about their struggles in the area of sexuality and so on. So this pastoral leader, he knew what to expect, and so he said, "Okay, let me start out. Let me share about my experience." No? And so he began to share about his own current situation, his triumphs, his defeats, his temptations, and so on. Now remember that in a group where you are with other brothers, of the same gender, it becomes easier to share these things. No? Now when this pastoral leader began to open up his life, the other brothers began to also have the courage to share about their own struggles. Admittedly, it is difficult, no? And we're not saying that you have to absolutely say everything in your group meetings. No? There is room for modesty. There is room for a certain healthy kind of shame and embarrassment. We don't want to be too graphic in our sharing. Almost like in our sharing it becomes another X-rated movie. But no, we can share openly and honestly with each other for the sake of getting encouragement and help from one another. No? And not just in the area of sexuality, it could be area of laziness or anger or impatience. No? Our tendency is to want to look good or to put our best foot forward. And in our small groups, these are the people who are most committed to us. And so we must also be open enough to share our weaknesses and also our victories. No? We don't want our meetings to become only a place to share about our defeats, but no, also our victories, also our triumphs. Satan works in darkness. He holds us down in our shame and guilt. Sharing these things openly can break the shame barrier. Okay? Come out of the darkness. If you bring those things out into the light, somehow you grow in the sense of proportion and perspective and peace as well. Now, for some people, because of their particular experience, it might really be too much for them to share in the meeting or in the small group. In that case, I would at least say, go to your pastoral leader privately and unburden yourself. Share your situation with your pastoral leader. And if that is still difficult, I would recommend talk to another, perhaps older Christian whom you trust. But there's wisdom in bringing these things out into the open. Satan wants us to hide them, to keep them to our shame. And that's the way for him to control us, to keep us back. No? But if we are able to at least share it with another person and get some prayer, get some wisdom, get some help, it will help us even more. Okay, and I think this is the last thing, confidentiality. This is another element to help make our groups work well. This is the flip side of living in the light. You know, we want to encourage people to share. Okay, people are sharing openly. What's our responsibility to that? The answer is confidentiality. We must not divulge information that is shared in the group with people outside the group. Okay? Especially people who have no responsibility over us. We don't want to divulge information. Proverbs 20, verse 19. He who goes about gossiping reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with one who speaks foolishly. Okay? So, in the men's and women's group, we want to be loyal to each other, and whatever is shared must remain within the group. Okay? The general rule is, do not broadcast what we have heard in our small group. The exception may be that if we are sure and confident that it's okay with our brother or sister. Don't just say, maybe he is. Maybe it's okay with him, so I'll share it anyway. No. Unless you are sure and confident that it's okay with this person. One brother was sharing with me just recently that in his men's group, at some point he shared about his openness to living single for the Lord. No? And so he was just saying that he's quite open to living single for the Lord. Now, a few days later, in a social event with brothers and sisters from the community, he was shocked, because when he approached a particular group, and there was a brother from his men's group there talking to a sister, when he approached them, the brother was in the middle of sharing about himself, about him, and about his openness to live single for the Lord. And he was shocked because why is this brother sharing something that I shared in confidence in the group? No, there's something wrong there. And so what we want to say outright is that we want to respect one another's sharing, and what is shared in the small group must remain within the small group. Okay? So we are bound to each other in personal loyalty to each other, unless you are very, very sure and confident that it's okay with a brother or sister. No? Otherwise, be very discerning. Sometimes we know or find out something about our brother or sister that we think they need help in. Okay? So what should we do? No? If a member of my group is doing something that I feel is wrong or that they need help in, but they're not sharing about it, he's not sharing about it, what should I do? The first thing I should do is approach him and say, brother, it's my impression that you are having a difficulty in this area. I really think you ought to share it. I think at the very least you ought to go to our pastoral leader and share it. Now suppose the brother is very, very hesitant, or he does not want to share it, and you are convinced that it's a very, very crucial, very important thing in the person's life, very serious area, it could be sin in his life, then you could tell the brother, okay, if you don't go to the pastoral leader, I will. Now what's the principle there? You are still expressing loyalty to your brother, but you are after his good. But you're not doing anything behind his back either. No? You tell him, or you ask him to do it himself, to talk to the pastoral leader. But if he doesn't want, then out of your loyalty to him, then you will tell him, or at least that's one option, to tell him that you yourself will go to the pastoral leader. No? It's not telling tales or divulging information. You are warning the brother ahead of time. No? And the reason is because you are convinced that it is for his own good. Okay? Confidentiality is an expression of personal loyalty to one another. Okay, there is a sixth element to our making our meetings work well. It's mutual accountability. This means being free to call one another on in keeping our commitments. We should let others speak to us honestly if we are not living up to our commitments, and vice versa. No? So in our group, because we have made similar commitments to righteousness of life, commitments to faithfulness in attending meetings and courses, faithfulness to prayer, faithfulness to reading scripture and so on. And if we are not living up to those commitments, then let's not be upset when brothers or sisters come to us and call us to account, because that's an expression of their love. No? And if our brothers and sisters in the group are not living up to their commitment, we ought to take responsibility to remind them and even correct them. So mutual accountability is very important. The worldly person, according to St. Paul, says yes and no at the same time. For ourselves, we want our yes to be yes and our no to be no. If we make a commitment to do certain things, let's try our best to live up to those commitments. And if our brothers and sisters take us to task for not doing so, let's thank them for that, because it's their way of expressing their love for us. Okay? Right. The second and final part of my talk is on pastoral leaders. Okay? Pastoral leaders. How can they help us? What is the role of pastoral leaders? A pastoral leader is someone who takes responsibility for some brothers and sisters to see that they are well connected to the community and they get the help that they need. Okay? In a certain way, they represent the community to us and us to the community leaders. Okay? They are the face of the community leaders to us. They are the ones helping us in this process, in this period of time of getting to know the community. You might say that the pastoral leader is an extension of the authority and the pastoral care given to us by the coordinator. Okay? Will we always have pastoral leaders? I think the answer is yes. No? Because if we have the humility to admit that we are always learning to be disciples, discipleship never ends. No? We cannot say that by the age of 60 years old, I'm already done with discipleship. I'm already perfect as a disciple. If you say that, then it shows that, no, you need more discipleship. No? At least you need to learn humility and to overcome pride and so on. No? But of course, the way your pastoral leader helps you will change as you get older and more mature in your walk with the Lord. A pastoral leader is a Christian brother or sister who is ahead of us in the Christian life. And usually he is a person with more maturity and experience. He is a good model of faith and faithfulness. What are things that a pastoral leader not? Okay? These are things that a pastoral leader is not. A pastoral leader is not a know-it-all. Now, sometimes you might have a very smart pastoral leader who seems to know all the answers. Okay? But if that pastoral leader is also honest, then he or she will say, I don't know that answer. I don't know the answer to that question right now. Now let me find out. No? So don't expect your pastoral leader to know everything right there and then. Okay? And sometimes he or she will say, let me get back to you with the answer. Okay? A pastoral leader is also not a guru. You know what a guru is? No? It's usually somebody who trains us in a particular kind of spirituality or a way of prayer that is very unique to this guru. No? Well, no. A pastoral leader is helping you to become a Christian disciple, to pray as a Christian, to love Jesus as a Christian. He or she is not trying to influence you to follow his or her style of spirituality. He or she is simply pointing you and helping you to go to Jesus Christ. No? A PL is also not someone who tells you how to live your life. Okay? Some people might want to have their PL, their pastoral leader, tell them everything. Okay? What should I do with my life? Who should I marry? No? Should I become a priest? Should I become a minister? Tell me, and I will obey you. No? I'm sorry, but that's not what a pastoral leader is supposed to do. No? And if you're the type also who doesn't want to be told what to do, well, take comfort in that. That's not what your pastoral leader wants to do anyway. No? What the pastoral leader wants to do is to give advice, give suggestions, give recommendations. Because of his own experience or because of his wisdom and knowledge, here are some things to consider. But you have to be the one to make the decision yourself. Don't expect someone else to live your life for you, but you live your life, you make the decisions, but your pastoral leader is there to help you. Okay? And you can receive the help as much as you are willing to receive the help. Also, don't expect a pastoral leader to solve all your problems. Okay? Sometimes your problems might not go away for a long time. Okay? Certain kinds of sins might take a while, and it might take a long time, in fact, for them to go away. But in a men's and women's group, we receive prayer, we receive love, we receive reassurance, we receive support, and our brothers and sisters, especially our pastoral leader, can give us wisdom or at least perspective in how to deal with these things. But we might not, certainly the pastoral leader cannot solve all our problems for us. So, what can you expect from your pastoral leader? Well, the main thing that the pastoral leader does is to lead the men's or women's group meetings. Okay? He is there to make sure that the meetings take place and that they take place according to the purpose of the group or to the meeting. Also, the pastoral leader will meet with you regularly. Now, what regularly means might vary from community to community or from situation to situation, but more or less, let's say, on a monthly basis. Okay? It is a good thing for a pastoral leader to get together with one member of his group or her group to talk things on that more one-on-one situation. Your pastoral leader will do his or her best to be available. Okay? And he or she will give you personal, pastoral input and advice. No? Advice, suggestions, recommendations, prayers. Okay? Here is something coming from a more mature person, someone with more experience. Okay, listen, okay, and take those advice to heart. Your pastoral leader will also give you feedback and sometimes correction. Okay? Now, in future talks, we will talk about the dynamics of personal relationships. And in Christian community, there's really room for correction. Okay? Because let's admit it, we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We break our promises, or we are mean to one another. We are irritable. We sin. No? We are weak people. And therefore, we need correction. And it's a service that we do for each other to give correction and to receive correction from our brothers and sisters. Pastoral leader will also explain some things to you, will encourage you, will pray for you. How can we help our pastoral leaders help us? Okay? What's our part in making sure that they are able to help us in the best possible way? Number one, I would say, receive their personal input. Have an open mind, an open heart to receive their input. Keep them informed. Okay? Don't just hide things from them, especially important things which have to do, let's say, with your righteousness, with your relationship with the Lord, or things which have a major impact on your life or the life of brothers and sisters. In some communities, a major concern nowadays is the issue of migration. Okay? And it becomes a problem if a person does not keep his pastoral leader informed about his or her desire or openness to migrating to another country. And he does things quietly and secretly, and finally, when he's about to leave the country, then he tells his pastoral leader, "Oh, I'm leaving tomorrow. You know? Goodbye." You know? That doesn't help. It doesn't help him, the person himself, because the pastoral leader is there to be a source of support and encouragement, a co-discerner. Sometimes we use the word co-discernment, no? Discerning with us regarding these very important things. We want to seek their input and help on how to handle certain things or areas in our life. Practical things. Brother, I need help in my finances. Brother, I need help in my job seeking. Brother, I need help in my sexual relationship with my wife. No? Practical things. And it's in that context of a very committed, close relationship with someone you trust that you can discuss these things. Go to them if you have problems or difficulties or complaints about community. Proverbs chapter 9, verse 9. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. The idea here is that we want to receive as much wisdom as we can. And thank God that in community we have this gift of our pastoral leader. This person is not perfect, this person does not know all the answers, etc. But at least we can expect wisdom and help and love and commitment from this person. Now, thank God for that. Proverbs 12, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. Ouch. Okay, Proverbs 12, verse 15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man, a wise woman, listens to advice. Okay? So the Bible keeps on exhorting us to get help from one another. Second thing that we can do to help our pastoral leader help us is respect and good relationship. Your pastoral leaders work very hard and they do not get paid for it. Okay? Surprise? Your pastoral leader, your discussion leader does not get paid for this service. It's a service of love. No? So in response, we also want to show our appreciation. We want to show our gratitude. And so let's respect our pastoral leader. Let's maintain good relationship with our pastoral leader. The Bible tells us to love, to esteem, to respect, and to obey our leaders. A good example of this is 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Paul says, "But we beseech you, brethren, to respect those who labor among you and are over you in the Lord and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love because of their work." Okay? Esteem them very highly in love because of their work. Another one is Hebrews chapter 13. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as men and women who have to give an account. Your pastoral leader is serving you, is watching over you, but your pastoral leader is also answerable to somebody else. Ultimately, he or she is answerable to the Lord. There's also great responsibility on the part of the pastoral leader. But we want to obey them. We want to esteem them very highly. Let them do this joyfully and not sadly, for that would be of no advantage to you. Okay? This is also from Hebrews 13. Let them do this joyfully and not sadly, for that would be of no advantage to you. It won't help you if you give them a hard time. Okay? It won't help you at all. In summary, the elements of our formation program include courses, men's or women's groups, and our pastoral leaders. Okay? So it's not just the teaching courses, the formation courses, that they're very important, but you also need the dynamic of small groups that we call men's or women's groups, where you experience community where the rubber hits the road, no? Where you are in direct contact with brothers and sisters. And also from our pastoral leader, where we receive care and support and guidance. Our small groups are a blessing to us, but we have to do our part in making them work. And the same thing with our pastoral leaders. They are a blessing to us from the Lord. Let's make their work easy by loving them and respecting them and honoring them. And let's also cooperate with them so that they can maximize the help that they can give to us. So what are some good attitudes to have in conclusion? Okay, just very quickly to say that we want to have transparency and openness. We want to have a determination to do our part, to give and not just receive. We want to have faithfulness and loyalty to one another. We want to be proactive. Okay? Proactive. We want to have humility and receptiveness. No? That openness to receive help and advice and even correction from our brothers and sisters, especially from our pastoral leader. We want to have respect for our leaders, honoring one another in our group. And finally, we want to have gratitude to the Lord for this great gift of our groups and of our pastoral leaders. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.